A 38-year-old single father was handed a $19 million check because he topped off the front left tire of a black SUV for free. The transaction occurred at 8:17 a.m. at Callaway Auto, located at 412 Main Street in Ashford, Ohio. Ryder Callaway stood beside a gray metal toolbox. Inside the top drawer, next to a 10mm socket, sat a tarnished silver charm bracelet engraved with the name Grace. He did not touch it. 24 hours earlier, Victoria Sterling had refused to pay a handwritten invoice for $199. She was the chief executive officer of Sterling Logistics. Her European SUV had a worn brake line and a loose exhaust heat shield. Ryder Callaway spent exactly 54 minutes replacing the line and securing the shield. He itemized the parts at $34.50 and labor at $164.50. Victoria Sterling dropped the paper on the counter. She called the bill fraudulent. She stated she did not take financial advice from mechanics. Then she drove away. Hello to our viewers watching today. Let me know in the comments your city and state. We appreciate your time. This story tracks how quiet competence survives under pressure. Ryder Callaway did not call the police. He did not contact an attorney. He wrote "closed" across the invoice and filed it. He owed $42,600 on the building and had $1,420 left in his business account. Now, a black Lincoln sedan sat in his gravel lot. Theodore Sterling, the founder of Sterling Capital, stepped out of the rear seat. He carried a heavy manila envelope. The Regional Corporate Service Center on Route 11 was scheduled to finalize a predatory foreclosure filing on Callaway Auto in exactly 46 minutes. The foreclosure clock was ticking down to 9:03 a.m., but the daily routine did not stop. Every morning for the past 1,825 days since his wife Carolyn passed away, Ryder Callaway followed the exact same schedule. He woke up at 5 a.m. in a two-bedroom frame house on Oak Street. By 5:30 a.m., he had cleared the kitchen table, prepared a lunchbox with a turkey sandwich and a thermos of black coffee, and written a short note for his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. He arrived at 412 Main Street at 6:45 a.m. The keys were on a brass ring that belonged to his father. Ashford, Ohio, was a town of 4,200 people. It was a community where residents noticed what you drove, what you owed, and who you owed it to. People knew Callaway Auto was vulnerable. The Regional Corporate Service Center on Route 11 had spent the last 18 months cutting prices on oil changes to $19.99, a price lower than the cost of the fluid itself. They could afford the loss. Ryder Callaway could not. His ledger showed the exact math of his survival. The monthly mortgage on the garage was $1,250. The commercial utility bill averaged $410. The commercial insurance premium was $380. To pay those numbers, Ryder worked 11 hours a day, 6 days a week. He did not buy new boots. He did not take vacations. He wore the same gray work shirts with Ryder embroidered in red script over the left pocket until the cuffs frayed. When people in town needed help, they came to him because they knew he did not look at them as a profit margin. 3 weeks ago, he spent 4 hours replacing the alternator on a delivery van owned by Martha Evans, who ran the local laundromat. He billed her only $85 for the alternator itself. He wrote 0.00 next to the labor line. "You can't run a business on wishes, Ryder," Martha had told him, setting 2 tens on the desk. "You need that van to make the morning drop-offs, Martha," Ryder said. He put the 2 tens back in her palm. "Pay me when the winter rush starts." The local banks did not operate on that logic. At 8:20 a.m., while Theodore Sterling remained seated inside the metal chair inside the open bay, Ryder's desk phone rang. It was the 3rd time that morning. The caller ID displayed the name of the regional loan manager from First Ohio Trust. Ryder did not answer it. He knew the manager was calling to confirm that the balance of $42,600 had not been deposited. Instead, Ryder picked up a clean shop rag and wiped a layer of dust off the top of his toolbox. His hand paused over the drawer containing the silver charm bracelet with the name Grace. He had found that bracelet inside the engine bay of Victoria Sterling's SUV 24 hours ago, lodged tightly beneath the brake fluid reservoir. He had not mentioned it to her before she drove off. He had not mentioned it to her father yet. Theodore Sterling watched the mechanic's hands. He did not look at his watch, but the digital display on the Lincoln's dashboard showed 8:24 a.m. The bank was legally authorized to freeze the garage accounts in exactly 49 minutes.
The digital display inside the Lincoln sedan shifted to 8:25 a.m. Theodore Sterling did not speak. He simply pointed toward the gray metal toolbox where Ryder's hand had lingered. "My daughter doesn't lose things," Theodore said. His voice was flat, carrying the gravelly tone of a man who spent 40 years shouting over the noise of steel fabrication plants. Ryder did not pull the drawer open. She lost this. 54 minutes before Victoria Sterling walked out on the $199 bill, Ryder had raised the black SUV on his primary hydraulic lift. While tracing the brake line from the master cylinder to the rear calipers, his flashlight had caught a glint of silver near the firewall. It was the charm bracelet. The name Grace was stamped into a heavy silver disc surrounded by 4 distinct charms: a miniature sailboat, an oil derrick, an anchor, and a solid gold gear. The gear was stamped with the logo of Sterling Logistics, but it was notched manually with 5 distinct file marks on the teeth. A standard executive promo piece did not have manual file marks. More importantly, Ryder had noticed something else while under the vehicle, something the high-priced mechanics at the corporate service center on Route 11 had completely missed during Victoria's mandatory 30,000-mile inspection 2 weeks prior. The brake line hadn't failed due to ordinary wear. It had been intentionally scored with a fine-tooth hacksaw blade right above the heat shield, where the damage would remain hidden from a standard visual check. The loose heat shield wasn't a loose bolt. It had been backed off exactly 3 threads to ensure it would vibrate against the scored 9, accelerating the failure. Ryder had spent 26 years looking at metal fatigue. He knew the difference between a pothole fracture and a deliberate cut. He had kept his mouth shut because Victoria was already on her phone, screaming at an assistant about a contract variance in Chicago. When he tried to explain the specific nature of the brake wear, she had cut him off, handed him the corporate card, and then retracted it the moment she saw the $164.50 labor charge. "You're a mechanic in a dying town," she had said, before hitting the ignition. Now, Theodore Sterling sat 3 feet from the toolbox containing the evidence. The father did not know about the hacksaw marks. He only knew his daughter had returned from Ashford with a fixed car and a story about an arrogant local mechanic. "Gerald Watts tells me you're an honest man, Mr. Calloway," Theodore said, leaning forward on his cane. "But honest men usually ask for their money when they're cheated." "The bill is settled," Ryder said. "I wrote 'closed' on it." "My daughter thinks you're a fraud," Theodore said. He tapped the manila envelope against his knee. "I think she's an amateur who doesn't know what a real day's work looks like. Tell me what you saw under that car." Ryder looked at the shop clock. It was 8:29 a.m. The corporate foreclosure team from Route 11 was scheduled to arrive with the sheriff's deputy in exactly 34 minutes.
The clock on the wall read 8:30 a.m. 2 weeks before Victoria Sterling pulled into Callaway Auto, her SUV had been serviced at Apex Fleet Centers on Route 11. The service receipt, which Theodore Sterling now pulled from his overcoat pocket, showed a total of $2,415. The invoice was signed by Marcus Vance, the regional director of Apex Fleet Centers. The report listed a full multi-point safety inspection. It declared the vehicle's brake system, chassis, and undercarriage to be 100% operational condition. Marcus Vance is a certified master technician, Theodore said, placing the document on the metal table between them. He manages the regional fleet for Sterling Logistics for 6 years. He tells me the noise my daughter heard was a common factory defect in the exhaust hanger. He says you tried to exploit her lack of mechanical knowledge. Ryder did not look at the paper. He knew Marcus Vance. Vance had been fired from a dealership in Toledo 10 years ago for inflating warranty claims before Apex hired him to manage their new corporate hubs. Marcus Vance looks at a computer screen, Ryder said flatly. I look at the steel. He backed up his assessment with a digital diagnostic report, Theodore noted, his eyes narrowing. The computer chip registered 0 faults in the braking system. That was the exact trap. A modern electronic sensor only registers fluid pressure drops or electrical circuit breaks. It does not register a physical notch cut halfway through a high-pressure line until the metal splits open under heavy load. The system was designed to appear perfectly safe right until the moment the driver pressed the pedal at 70 miles per hour on the state highway. The dramatic irony sat heavily in the room. The corporate experts at Apex were completely confident. Their paperwork was flawless. Their digital logs were clean. To any outside investigator or insurance adjuster, Ryder Calloway looked like an uncertified small-town mechanic trying to hustle $199 out of a billionaire's daughter. Theodore Sterling picked up the Apex receipt. If Marcus Vance is right, you're running a scam, Mr. Calloway. If you're right, my daughter drove 40 miles on a highway with a vehicle that should have crashed. Ryder stood up. He walked to the workbench and picked up a specialized 3/16-inch tube cutter and a section of double-walled steel fuel line. He did not give a speech. He did not defend his credentials. Mr. Sterling, your daughter's SUV didn't have a factory defect, and Marcus Vance didn't miss a mistake. He created it. The phone on the wall rang again. The caller ID flashed First Ohio Trust. It was 8:36 a.m. The bank's automated legal system was set to initiate the asset seizure sequence in exactly 27 minutes.
The clock on the wall shifted to 8:37 a.m. Ryder did not answer the ringing phone. Instead, he pulled open the top drawer of his gray toolbox and removed the silver charm bracelet. He laid it flat on the concrete table directly next to the clean section of steel line. "Look at the gold gear charm, Mr. Sterling," Ryder said. Theodore Sterling reached into his pocket, pulled out a pair of wire-rimmed reading glasses, and leaned down. His hands, usually rock-steady, stiffened as he saw the 5 manual file marks on the teeth of the tiny gold gear. "Those marks aren't decorative," Ryder explained, his voice even and precise. "A standard industrial gear operates on a ratio. In logistics, 5 notches manually cut into a company seal signifies a specific internal code. Your daughter isn't just the CEO of Sterling Logistics. She signed the audit authorization for the Route 11 hub exactly 5 days ago." Theodore's breath caught slightly. "The asset liquidation audit?" "Yes," Ryder said. He picked up a small inspection mirror and angled it toward the light. "Now look at the cut I found on her vehicle's brake line. A fine-tooth hacksaw blade makes a .025-inch kerf. The scoring on her line was exactly that width. But it wasn't done from the bottom, where a roadwork would hit it. It was cut from the top down, meaning the person who did it was leaning over the engine bay while the vehicle was on the ground." The pieces of the pattern clicked together with cold mathematical logic. Marcus Vance hadn't just signed a fake inspection report to cover up laziness. He had sabotaged the vehicle because the audit Victoria was executing would expose a 7-figure parts skimming operation Apex Fleet Centers had been running through the Sterling Logistics regional accounts for the past 3 years. The silver bracelet hadn't been lost. It had caught on the vehicle's firewall insulation when Victoria herself had checked the oil fluid levels before leaving her house that morning, completely unaware that someone had already worked on the engine bay hours prior. This wasn't a simple billing dispute over a $199 invoice anymore. The danger was systemic, corporate, and far larger than a small-town garage.
Victoria Sterling had driven away thinking she was punishing a greedy mechanic, completely blind to the reality that the man she insulted had just saved her life by replacing a line that was engineered to fail on the highway curve 4 miles north of town. Theodore Sterling stared at the bracelet, the reality hitting him like a physical blow. The people he had trusted with his family's legacy were actively trying to eliminate the auditor. He looked up at Ryder. The sheriff's vehicle and the Apex repossession truck were scheduled to turn onto Main Street in exactly 19 minutes.
The low rumble of a heavy diesel engine vibrated through the concrete floor of Callaway Auto. A flatbed tow truck bearing the bright blue logo of Apex Fleet Centers pulled up to the curb, followed immediately by an Ashford Police Department cruiser. Deputy Miller stepped out of the cruiser holding a clipboard containing the signed foreclosure execution order from First Ohio Trust. Behind him was Marcus Vance, wearing a tailored corporate windbreaker, a digital tablet clutched in his hand. "Ryder," Deputy Miller said as he walked into the bay, his voice tight. He didn't look Ryder in the eye. "Time's up. The bank ordered the asset freeze. We need to clear the floor." Marcus Vance stepped forward, pointing his tablet toward the lifts. "We have the secondary lien on that primary lift. Start logging the serial numbers on that primary lift." Ryder didn't move. He didn't argue. He simply pointed toward the metal chairs where Theodore Sterling sat quietly in the shadows of the tool bay. The moment Marcus Vance recognized the founder of Sterling Capital, the color drained from his face. His hands froze on the edges of the tablet. The entire room went completely silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. "Mr. Sterling," Vance stammered, taking a step back, I didn't expect you to be in Ashford. If there's an issue with the fleet—" "The issue is the math, Marcus," Theodore Sterling said, standing up slowly. He walked over to the workbench, picked up the scored piece of steel line Ryder had saved from Victoria's vehicle, and dropped it directly onto Vance's digital tablet. The metal clinked sharply against the screen. Theodore looked at Deputy Miller. "Call the State Highway Patrol Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Unit. Tell them they have an emergency inspection warrant to execute at the Apex facility on Route 11. Vance began to speak, his voice rising an octave as he tried to explain away the digital diagnostic logs, but Theodore cut him off with a single gesture. The room remained dead silent. The corporate authority Vance had carried into the garage dissolved in less than 60 seconds under the weight of unassailable physical proof. Ryder walked back to the workbench, picked up his 10mm socket wrench, and turned back to the young woman's sedan still sitting on his lift. The crisis on his floor had changed instantly. It was 8:59 a.m. The local bank's automated foreclosure sequence was scheduled to execute the final account seizure in exactly 12 minutes. The digital wall clock clicked to 8:52 a.m. Marcus Vance did not wait for the State Highway Patrol to arrive. He backed out of the open bay door, climbed into his corporate vehicle, and sped out of the gravel lot toward Route 11. Deputy Miller remained inside, looking down at the signed foreclosure paperwork on his clipboard. "Mr. Sterling," the deputy said quietly, "the automated lien system at the bank doesn't stop for an inspection warrant. If that $42,600 isn't cleared in 11 minutes, the state locks this building." "The building isn't going anywhere, Deputy," Theodore Sterling said. He turned away from the door and looked at the manila envelope he had placed on the arm of the metal chair. The initial problem, an unpaid $199 invoice from a dismissive customer, had pulled back the curtain on a much larger corporate conspiracy. The parts skimming operation at Apex Fleet Centers was not isolated to one regional hub. Gerald Watt's investigation had revealed that over the past 36 months, Apex had systematically falsified safety inspection records for 142 logistics vehicles across 3 states to mask the theft of critical brake and steering components. Victoria Sterling had been sent to execute a routine internal financial audit, completely unaware that she was walking into a multi-million-dollar trap. The people who had spent months calling Ryder Callaway a dying breed, dismissing his small-town shop as an obsolete relic, now desperately needed his physical evidence to secure their own supply chains.
Theodore opened the manila envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a certified cashier's check drawn directly from the Sterling Private Endowment Fund. "Mr. Calloway," Theodore said, his voice dropping the hard industrial edge it had carried since he arrived, "my daughter has spent her entire career believing that value is only what can be measured on a digital spreadsheet. She missed the fact that a business built on speed without character is just a disaster waiting for a highway curve." He laid the check flat on the workbench, right next to the 10mm socket wrench Ryder had just set down. The face of the check read exactly $19 million. Ryder looked down at the number. The printed digits were clean, precise, and absolute. It was 8:57 a.m. The bank's automated foreclosure sequence was scheduled to freeze the Callaway Auto corporate registration in exactly 6 minutes.
The clock on the wall read 8:58 a.m. Ryder Calloway did not reach for the check. He picked up his desk phone, dialed the direct extension for the regional loan manager at First Ohio Trust, and placed the receiver against his ear. "This is Ryder Calloway at Callaway Auto," he said, his voice entirely steady. "Verify a routing number for a certified wire transfer from the Sterling Private Endowment Fund. The amount is $42,600.00." On the other end of the line, the manager's keyboard clacked rapidly. A 3-second silence followed before the man spoke, his tone completely transformed from the cold bureaucracy of the past 3 weeks. "Mr. Calloway, the system shows the transfer is cleared. The commercial lien on 412 Main Street has been terminated. The foreclosure file is closed." Ryder hung up the phone. He looked back at the check still resting on the clean shop rack. $19 million. "I can't clear a bill for $19 million, Mr. Sterling," Ryder said, his gray work shirt still smudged with grease from the transmission flush. "The parts were $34.50, the labor was $164.50, the tire was free. That is the only math that belongs on my books." Theodore Sterling walked to the doorway, leaning heavily on his cane as he looked out at Main Street, where the town was slowly waking up. "The $42,000 paid your debt, Mr. Calloway. The $19 million isn't a payment for a brake line. It is a capitalization structure for an independent regional safety inspection network. You are the sole director. You choose the hubs. You hire the technicians. You teach them how to look at the steel instead of the computer screen." By 9:15 a.m., the truth had already begun to move through the county. The State Highway Patrol Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Unit arrived at the Route 11 hub with 3 transport vans, sealing the maintenance bays and seizing every digital diagnostic terminal under the direction of the state prosecutor. There were no public declarations, no dramatic shouting matches on the sidewalk, and no grand speeches delivered to the local press. The recognition was documented entirely in the cold, unyielding facts of the official state investigation report filed later that afternoon. The document explicitly cited the physical forensic analysis provided by Callaway Auto as the sole reason a catastrophic multi-state fleet failure had been averted. At 3:30 p.m., Victoria Sterling returned to Ashford. She did not drive her high-end SUV. She sat in the passenger seat of her father's Lincoln sedan. She walked into the garage, her charcoal blazer slightly wrinkled, and stopped 2 feet from the grease-stained counter. She did not offer a cinematic apology. She simply placed a $100 bill and a $100 bill together on the counter, next to a single $1 bill. $201. "The invoice was $199, Ryder said from under the hood of the sedan he was finishing. "The extra $2 is for the air in the front left tire, Mr. Calloway," Victoria said. Her voice was level, but she did not look away from his eyes. Ryder looked at the money, then at the woman who had finally learned the exact cost of a real day's work. He nodded once, picked up the cash, and placed it in his shirt pocket. The clock on the wall read 3:42 p.m. The 3 young mechanics Ryder had contacted for his new training program were scheduled to arrive at the shop door in exactly 18 minutes.
The clock on the wall struck 4 p.m. 3 young adults, 2 men and a woman from working-class families in southern Ohio, stepped through the open bay doors of Callaway Auto. They wore clean denim pants and heavy work boots. They did not come with corporate certificates or expensive diagnostic tablets. They came because Ryder Calloway had offered them a living wage to learn a trade that the modern market had tried to automate out of existence. Over the next 12 months, the physical transformation of 412 Main Street remained deliberately subtle. The faded sign above the roll-up door was never replaced. The sun-worn lettering still stood as a testament to 11 years of quiet endurance. But behind the garage, 2 new state-of-the-art inspection bays were constructed, equipped with industrial hydraulic lifts and heavy-duty metal fabrication tools that allowed for deep structural analysis of commercial vehicles. The $19 million endowment fund operated exactly as Theodore Sterling had promised. It did not require monthly board meetings or corporate compliance metrics. It functioned quietly in the background, funding the Callaway Regional Safety Network. Within a year, the program expanded to 4 independent hubs across the state, all managed by local independent mechanics who prioritized physical inspection over digital diagnostic reports. The Corporate Service Center on Route 11 went dark 6 months after the state patrol raid. Its glass storefront was boarded up, its predatory pricing models rendered completely useless against a community that had rediscovered the value of unshakable competence. Every evening at 5:30 p.m., Ryder Calloway followed the exact same routine. He washed the gray motor oil from his hands at the utility sink, locked the heavy brass ring of keys inside his desk, and walked into his small back office. On the wall, mounted inside a simple black frame from the local hardware store, hung the unevenly written note with the hand-drawn stars that his daughter Lily had left on his kitchen counter during the darkest night of the foreclosure crisis. He never looked at the bank balances, he never checked the investment filings, he looked at the paper that reminded him why he chose to stay honest when the world gave him every reason to act badly. The most valuable assets in any community are almost always the ones that carry no branding, seek no attention, and perform their duty without demanding a crowd. True competence does not need to shout. It simply waits for the loud elements to fail, knowing that the steel always tells the truth in the end. Thank you for staying with us through this journey. If this story reminded you of someone who works quietly with integrity, please leave a comment below to share their story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help us highlight more hidden geniuses who keep our world running every single day. We truly appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next story.